I can see it in his eyes every day. The hurt, the betrayal, the anger. It's all there in his face when he looks at me. I know it's not just disappointment anymore. It's a deep wound, one that may never heal. Josh used to smile when he saw me, but now the warmth is gone. He looks at me as if I'm a stranger, as if he's unsure who I am anymore. And I understand why. I did the unthinkable. I cheated on him. 3 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. It wasn't just a moment of weakness, but a series of poor decisions that built up over time. I was emotionally drained, dealing with postpartum depression and feeling disconnected from my husband. Josh was working long hours at a job he hated, and when he came home, we were both exhausted. We barely spoke to each other. Our child was just a few months old and everything felt like too much. I was overwhelmed by sleepless nights and the constant demands of motherhood, but I felt invisible. I needed attention, affection, but instead I got silence. One day when things were at their worst, I found myself drawn to someone else, a coworker named Luke. He was younger, full of energy, and everything seemed so easy with him. He made me feel seen, something I hadn't felt in months. I justified it at first, telling myself that I deserved a little happiness. But deep down, I knew it was wrong. Still, I allowed myself to get swept up in it. The affair was brief, lasting only a few months, but it felt like a lifetime in its own way. I tried to bury it. I convinced myself that it was over, that I'd ended it before it could do any real damage. But then, a few weeks ago, Josh found an old email. It was a message I had written to Luke, referring to one of our encounters. Josh confronted me, and at first I panicked. I denied everything, thinking I could cover it up. But when he showed me the evidence, I had no choice but to admit the truth. I told him it was over, that it had been years since I'd seen Luke, and I thought that would be enough. But it wasn't. The damage had been done. Josh wasn't angry at first. He was just quiet. He didn't yell or scream. He just looked at me, and I could see the pain in his eyes. I tried to reassure him, to prove that I was committed to fixing things. I gave him access to my phone, my email, my car, anything he wanted. I blocked Luke on social media, even though I hadn't spoken to him in months. I thought that might make a difference, but Josh wasn't satisfied. How could he be? I spent hours answering his questions, no matter how painful they were. I apologized over and over, telling him how much I regretted what I'd done. But every time I looked into his eyes, I saw the same thing. A person who had lost faith in me. Every word, every gesture felt meaningless to him. He couldn't trust me anymore, and I couldn't blame him. It's been weeks since D-Day, and I've been trying so hard to show him that I love him. I've tried to be the partner he deserves, the one who supports him, who makes him feel safe. But it's never enough. It's like he's a million miles away, and I'm here, desperately trying to fix something that may never be repairable. I wonder if I'll ever be able to regain his trust, if he'll ever believe me when I tell him I'm committed to him. The hardest part is not knowing if he'll ever forgive me, not knowing if we can rebuild, not knowing if I'm even capable of being the person he needs. Every time he looks at me, I can see the doubt in his eyes, and I wonder if that doubt will ever go away. I'll never forget the way he looked at me when he asked for a divorce. It wasn't in anger. It was calm, almost resigned. He told me he couldn't trust me anymore. There was no future for us, not the way we used to dream about it. He wasn't angry. He was tired. Tired of pretending everything was okay. Tired of pretending he could move past my betrayal. He said he had been trying for months, but it was clear now that he couldn't keep pretending. I destroyed everything, and now I have to live with that. The divorce was inevitable, and while it's devastating, I understand. He deserves peace, and I can't blame him for wanting to end things. I'll carry the pain of this for the rest of my life. I will never forget the way I hurt him, the way I betrayed his trust. He'll never look at me the same way again, and I don't think he'll ever fully forgive me. But I can't change that. All I can do now is try to be a good co-parent for our child and move forward, knowing that I lost the love of my life because of my own selfish choices. Story 2. I've hurt him again. I don't know how to stop. Every time I think I've learned my lesson, I find myself slipping. It started with small mistakes, Little flirtations, kisses that didn't mean anything at the time, but it kept getting worse. I thought I could control it, but each time I lied to myself, convincing myself that it didn't matter. And the lies kept piling up. His name is Mark, and he deserves so much more than what I've given him. When we first started dating, everything felt so perfect. He was kind, patient, and always there for me. But somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. I took him for granted. I convinced myself that I needed more attention, more validation from other men. And each time I gave in to temptation, I hurt him. The first time, it was just a kiss on the dance floor. It was a mistake, but I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then it happened again and again. I started having casual hookups, lying to him about where I was and who I was with. I thought I could stop whenever I wanted, but I never did. Eventually, we started therapy. I promised Mark that I was serious about changing. I told him I wanted to be better, that I was committed to fixing things. But even after making that promise, I messed up. One of my hookups happened while we were in therapy, and I didn't even tell him. He found out on his own. That was the breaking point for him, but I couldn't stop myself. I kept lying, kept hiding the truth from him. The worst part came 2 months ago. I slept with his sister's husband. I can't even imagine how devastated he would be if he found out. That's the part I can't forgive myself for. If he ever knew, that would be the end of us. I don't know how I can keep living with this guilt, knowing I've crossed every line I promised not to. For the past few months, I've tried to do better. I've stopped going to places where I know I'll be tempted. I've tried to be more honest with him, or at least as honest as I can be. Things have been better recently. We haven't had any major incidents, and I feel like I'm finally trying to do the right thing. But I can see it in his eyes. He doesn't trust me. How could he? I've betrayed him too many times. Mark keeps asking me if I can change. He doesn't believe me anymore, and I can't blame him. I've broken his trust over and over again, and now I don't know if I can ever fix it. A part of me wonders if this is just who I am, a selfish, impulsive person who ruins everything good in my life. But another part of me wants to believe that I can change, that I can be the person he deserves. I keep telling myself that I'll do better, but the truth is, I don't know if I can. I don't know if he'll ever believe me again, and I don't blame him if he doesn't. I've taken so much from him, his trust, his peace of mind, his belief in me. I don't know if our relationship can survive this, but I want to try, even though I'm not sure I have it in me.